you to consider funding criteria. So what did you get? What did you think? Let's take a look at what UK Sport actually based their decision on. As I said, we can look at funding criteria here. Medal potential. Is the performance gap bridgeable? In simple terms, what's the probability of medal success? Is there a chance of winning some gold? The evidence of a performance system that's in place to produce a high number of talented athletes, again leading to potentially more medals. The track record. Is it a proven track record of success at this level? Very important in terms of funding and funding levels there. Is there value for money? This comes back to return on investment. Is there a return on investment per medal? They look at the return of medals based on success. As I said previously, cycling is a good example. They've actually received more and more money in relation to their continued and sustained success. So in return for increased success, they've received more money. Quite simple. Also, informal assessments are made. For example, the number of world-class athletes in a sport or in our setup, the number of medals to be targeted. This is obviously particularly true of the Olympics. National governing bodies need to show some ambition there. Also, the significance of sport on a world stage. In this context, athletics still gets relatively high levels of funding in the UK, even though we don't have relative success due to its perception as a very major event. Swimming is also similar in this respect. Swimming and athletics are viewed as high-profile sports. Therefore, they gain funding if we want to give them high profile within our success. A summary here, and you can see an illustration there as well on the screen, in terms of what to fund. So what's the UK's position, and is there potential for success? Does the sport need financial support? I think if we use the football example, we could say that professional football certainly doesn't. Does the benefit from investment outweigh the costs? This will be judged on profits and medal returns. And can the sport deliver? Post-2012, some sports actually had their funding cut completely because they just didn't deliver. I'd now like to spend some time and discuss lottery funding. There's a hyperlink on the PowerPoint which will direct you towards some information in terms of lottery funding. As of March 31st, 2016, sport actually received 20% of the total amount of funds raised for national lottery projects. £182 million was spent on sport in Wales since the start of the national lottery. Of course, we need to consider Wales is a smaller country with a much smaller population than England, perhaps in relation to the rest of the UK. £3,834 million has been spent on sport in England since the start of the lottery. £750 million spent on supporting elite sport since the lottery started. The Olympics and Paralympics there. These are ballpark figures based on the information gained from the Sport England website. £376 million has been allocated for Rio 2016 and the Winter Olympics, which will take place in South Korea, in Pyeongchang, in 2018. So in terms of funding, what is the way forward? We could consider publishing more transparent funding criteria. We could consider the use of financial rewards for performance, where this money is being made more accountable for in individual sports and performance. In effect, performance bonuses. Also, which sports should receive public funding in relation to income? Some sports generate a lot of their own income but still receive public funding. Is this fair? This is something we can consider. We could also look at spreading the investments that target high value sports as well as the quantity of results. Difficult decisions to be made here. Who gets the money? Elitist sports like rowing or yachting, perhaps? What about sports like handball or basketball that could more easily improve participation across the board, but who actually lost funding after London 2012? We could also take account of sustained public sporting preferences, where there are higher numbers. Why are we not supporting these sports? Could we see an increase in success at elite level if we improve funding at foundation or performance phases? We can certainly see that there are a lot of things to consider and there are some difficult choices to be made. As I say, should it all be about elite performance? Should we instead concentrate on improving pathways from the foundation, participation and performance phase? If you do go on and work in sports development, these are the types of questions you may face. What I'd like to do now is ask you to attempt a short task. Using football, Identify what systems currently exist for identifying and developing talent. I'd also like you to recommend any improvements that you would make to further enhance more talent reaching the excellent stage. So think about what you might consider there. Okay. Again, let's do what we usually do. Take 10 to 15 minutes to work on this one for me, please. So I set you a task there regarding talent identification. So what do you know about Talent ID? I'm going to share some quite generic information in terms of talent identification. Of course, as per your task, you may want to concentrate on football. As always, that's fine. Okay. Football does have a wide reach. We get lots of potential elite performers into academies, for example. But how many actually make it? And what happens to those who don't? A scheme that you may have heard of, it was recently on the radio, and it's quite an interesting scheme. UK Sport and the English Institute of Sport, the EIS, together with the major football authorities, including the LFE, are offering released apprentices and first-year professional players the chance to take up a new challenge and switch their talents to targeted Olympic sports. This is called Pitch to Podium. And this scheme aims to provide young football players, aged 18 to 22, who have not secured a professional football contract, a quite unique opportunity really to succeed in an alternative Olympic sport. So there we can see perhaps going back to when we discussed things such as having a broad base of generic skills early on in the foundation phase, we can perhaps see the benefit now, where a football player may have transferable skills that they could use in another sport at potentially Olympic level. I'd also like to take some time now to just consider the LTAD framework, and we could look at that area which we already discussed, and the scholarships for talented athletes in further education and higher education, the Talented Athlete Support Scheme in England. In the USA, their model there is driven very much through college and university sport. In the UK, could we do more in terms of provision at elite level through educational establishments? That's something to consider. Also, of course, we can improve identification measures. What are we looking for? What do we need? These vital things. Also, I think we could offer more transparency through junior rankings, particularly where ranking status may filter out performers at a very early age. I think it may also be a good idea to re-examine funding balance at each level of the sports development continuum. Do we place enough investment at each level to enable the appropriate pathways for people to be nurtured and progress through in terms of these pathways? Should we see more coaches working at elite levels? So various things to consider there in relation to the sports development continuum and the various pathways. We could also consider the implementation of a new coaching task force. Do we need more coaches at level 2 and level 3, for example, in order to nurture talent and help that talent develop? Also, we could look at developing a national club strategy. That will enable us to drive people through a structured development program and process. If we consider funding again, and you may notice that it often comes back to funding, quite crucially, there is an issue with dealing with devolution. This has made it more difficult to track where the money goes and how much is available in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So some new funding recommendations, I think it would be good if they consider all the home countries, result in improved performance at a high performance level, and also meet the needs of athletes and national governing bodies. And crucially, be simple, cost effective, have a low cost, and also efficient. Okay, I'd like to refer you again to the UK Sport website. Let's find out what they do, who they are, and what their role is, and why they fund what they fund. Established by a Royal Charter in 1996, UK Sport works in partnership with the home country sport councils and other agencies to lead sport in the UK to world-class success, hopefully. UK Sport is responsible for managing and distributing public investment and is a statutory distributor of funds raised by the National Lottery. It's accountable to Parliament through the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. UK Sport's work is directed by a board which meets every 2 months. Their mission, well, UK Sport will work in partnership to lead sport in the UK to world-class success. That's really quite crucial there. To finish off, what I'd like to do for this section is I'd like you to do another sort of self-directed learning task What I'd like to do just to finish off this section now then is for you to do some research, some directed reading at the levels of funding that each of the sports received at the Rio Olympic Games in 2016. This is in terms of the funding they received. I'd like you to compare the performance of various sports highlighted: athletics, archery, canoeing, cycling, rowing, sailing, swimming and boxing. You can then check back to how they did in London 2012 and how they did in Beijing 2008. Identify which sports provided the best value for money in relation to success, and consider whether their levels of funding reflected their relative success. Also consider what were the expectations in Rio 2016. Again, I would direct you towards the UK Sport website, which you will be able to find that information there.